Nellie Bly's Race Around the World.
Elizabeth Jane Cochrane, or as she is more commonly known, Nellie Bly, changed the perspective of how women were viewed in society through her journalism and investigative leadership. Her legacy lasts today through her actions of empowering women to be more adventurous and proving, through journalism, that women can do anything they set their minds to, also changing the perspective of how women were viewed in society.
Nellie Bly was born on May 5, 1864, in Cochrane's Mills, Pennsylvania, where she grew up. Nellie Bly wasn't any normal girl. Usually, girls would wear brown and black, but no, not Nellie. Her mother would dress her up in pink, and that's how she got her nickname, Pinky.
Bly's father, Michael Cochrane, founded this town and provided for his family by working as a judge and a landowner. Bly said that her father always encouraged her and her siblings to do their best each and every day. Unfortunately, her father died when she was only 6 years old.
Bly, in order to support her single mother, she went to a small college in Pennsylvania and studied to be a teacher.
The school Bly went to is now known as Indiana University of Pennsylvania, or UIP, but when Bly went there, it was called Indiana Normal School. When she was done with school, she and her mother moved and they ran a boarding house together.
One day, in the early 1800s, Cochrane submitted a comment in protest of an editorial piece that was published in the Pittsburgh Dispatch. The piece was about how women were only meant to do certain things. Nellie's comment caught the attention of the paper's managing editor, and that's how her writing career started.
In the late 1900s, few women wrote for newspapers, and those who did had pen names. This was because it was thought of as improper for a woman to reveal her identity publicly. While they were trying to think of a pen name for her, one of the workers walked by humming the popular song Nellie Bly by Stephen Foster. They decided her name would be Nelly Bly, like the song, but the editor spelt it wrong, so she became Nellie Bly.
One day, Bly decided she wanted to work for a big newspaper in New York. She went to New York with high hopes and talked to many of the main newspaper editors. She asked them what they thought of women in reporting. Not many of them thought it was a good idea.
Bly wasn't getting anywhere, so she went to talk to the newspaper she wanted to work for the most, which was the New York World. There she demanded to talk to the editor. It took a while, but they eventually let her go to him. She then told him her ideas for some articles. They chose her most challenging idea, saying that if she did it, and well, she could have a job.
The New York World asked her to pretend to be insane, so she could get into the Blackwell's Insane Asylum to see if it was true that the nurses and doctors treated the patients poorly. Bly was willing to do this so she could get a spot in the newspaper. She succeeded and found out they did treat patients very poorly. They would give the patients ice-cold baths with no towels. Then they'd go to bed freezing cold. The nurses would also beat and threaten the poor patients for no good reason. Bly said, "I'd looked so eagerly to leave the horrible place. For 10 days, I had been one of them."
Going into Blackwell's Insane Asylum was Bly's first investigative piece. She also did some pieces, including one where she was an elephant trainer and one where she was a sweatshop woman.
After that, Nellie Bly became well known as a stunt double reporter. She once said, "I have never written a word that did not come from my heart. I never shall."
Bly came up with the idea to travel around the world when she woke up on a Sunday. The thought of doing nothing made her restless, and she wanted to explore the world. She wanted to beat the record set in a fictional book, Around the World in 80 Days, by Jules Verne, where the main character, Phileas Fogg, travels around the world in 80 days. She wanted to be a leader, mainly to women, and also to those who thought they couldn't do anything. She showed them that they can do anything as long as they put their mind to it, just like she did.
When she told the newspaper her idea, they were reluctant to let her go because of her gender. Bly earlier said, "I was too impatient to work at the usual duties assigned women on newspapers." And she still was. After about a year, she heard rumors that they were planning on sending a male. Her response to this was, "Very well, Start the man and I'll start the same day for some other newspaper and beat him.
After Bly left, there were no articles to print about the trip so far, so they decided to start a contest. Everyone who wanted to was to guess exactly how long, to the second, it would take Nellie Bly to get around the world and back, and send in a coupon with their answer. The winner was to receive a trip to Europe.
Nellie traveled on horseback, rickshaw, sampan, burro, ship, and other vehicles. The first ship she got on for a trip around the world was the Augusta Victoria.
Bly brought on her trip 2 traveling caps, 3 veils, a pair of slippers, toilet articles, an inkstand, pens, pencils, paper, pins, needles, thread, a dressing gown, tennis blazer, a small flask, a drinking cup, some underwear, handkerchiefs, and a jar of cold cream. She fit all of that into one suitcase. She said, "If one is traveling simply for the sake of traveling and not for the purpose of impressing one's fellow travelers, the problem with baggage becomes a very simple one."
Another woman, whose name was Elizabeth Bisland, was a reporter for The Sun.
Bisland also started her trip around the world the same day, but a little later and going west instead of east, in hopes of beating Bly around the world.
Nellie had to make many stops along the way. Some stops were New Jersey to London, London to Omnia, Omnia to Brindisi, Brindisi to Port Said, Port Said to Singapore, Singapore to Hong Kong, Hong Kong to San Francisco, and San Francisco to New Jersey again.
Bly did make it around the world, beating both Elizabeth Bisland and Phileas Fogg. She said, "Energy rightly applied and directed will accomplish anything."
Nellie Bly had many accomplishments, but the one she is most known for is her trip around the world. On this trip, not only did she show the world that women should be confident in themselves, that they are just good as men. Nellie Bly isn't just inspiration to women, she's an inspiration to everyone.
Elizabeth Jane Cochrane, or as she is more commonly known, Nellie Bly, changed the perspective of how women were viewed in society through her journalism and investigative leadership. Her legacy lasts today through her actions of empowering women to be more adventurous and proving, through journalism, that women can do anything they set their minds to, also changing the perspective of how women were viewed in society.